D3 Datacast brought to you by Blockbuster Video. Wow, what a difference! Welcome back to another week on the D3 Datacast. Thanks for joining us here again. And remember, you can connect with us on Twitter at twitter.com/D3Datacast or facebook.com/D3Datacast. And another reminder about our little subscriber drive we have going on here. We are counting down towards 200 subscribers, and our plan is at every even 100 increment to do a special live show where we interact with our great subscribers. Maybe look at some Pool C cases or some regional ranking things that you might be interested in. Take the cues from you, go through the data, and hang out and have some fun. So we are at 157 subscribers as we're recording this week. So if you haven't, click that subscribe button for us. Please do that. And Matt, as we have so often, we're going to start with a new, fresh and hot top 25 ballot that you have coming out for this week's top 25 poll. You want to take us through it?
It is fresh. I don't know if it's hot, but yeah, we can take a look at the top 25 that I just submitted. I just hit submit to d3hoops.com a few minutes ago as we record here on Sunday evening. So here's my ballot. I will go through some of the items of interest, and then you can fire away any questions you might have at me, Zach. So kind of how I feel on this ballot, I feel pretty good about my top 10 as far as the teams being in there, kind of up through Rochester at 10. Maybe not the exact order, as that's not going to be permanent, but I feel like those are kind of the best teams. From there on to the end, it can get pretty tight. Uh, you know, Johns Hopkins here, they're at 11, had a loss against Swarthmore this week. I moved them down maybe 3 spots. I didn't ding them too far. Roanoke at 14. I'm probably the high person on Roanoke. I really like what they've done this year. The big loss to NYU, maybe accepting there. Wash U's coming on strong. I have them at 16. They're looking good in UAA play. I know there's been a lot of conversation about exactly how the UAA stacks up. It looks like a good league. But Wash U, after falling out of my ballot for a little while, kind of in the middle season, they're coming back in now in conference play. UW Oshkosh comes back up for me. I think they had a nice week. They beat UW La Crosse most recently. They look pretty good. And St. Thomas has kind of bounced around for me between that 15 and 25 range. They're in at 19. Then I have Trine, Hampton, Sydney. I'm maybe high on them as well, still ranked. I really like the ODAC this year, and Hampton Sydney has a few good results. So we'll see if they stick for me, depending on what their results happen later on in ODAC play. And then Emory at 23, talking about the UAA. They lost a game to Carnegie Mellon, and then they won an overtime game against Case Western Reserve. So they fell down, maybe 8 spots for me, but they're still in the top 25. And then Middlebury at 24, and Calvin comes back in for me at 25. The big win against Hope, middle of the week, was impressive. Then a road win at Adrian, which was maybe a little closer than it should have been, but kind of on average for the week for Calvin. They had been just outside my top 25, and now they check right back in at the 25 spot for me. So that's kind of where I'm looking at this week. And I know you said you maybe wanted to interview me slightly about this. So what are you thinking here, Zach?
Yeah, Sunday afternoon as we were keeping tabs on the UAA games, I know there was some banter starting up between top 25 voters as you guys are trying to put your ballots together for the week. And I feel like we've reached that point in the season where there's the real tension coming to a head between preseason expectations and the actual season results. So I wonder where you stand on that. How much in the back of your mind are you thinking about what you expected of a team versus what the results so far have been? And then even as far as we are into the season, you can start looking at earlier season results maybe a little bit differently than how a team has looked over the past maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, for me, I'm not considering any preseason expectations at this point. I know my computer ratings aren't, but even just me personally, when I'm thinking about where do I place a team, my expectations, other than maybe subconsciously, I'm not weighing anything in. I think that second question about early season games is what I'm starting to think about now. Uh, would I start discounting a early November result or the month of November if a team's coming on strong now? I think I would a little bit. In general, I still maybe look at a team's total body of work, but in doing that, I'm not really trying to do a system of punishments and rewards, I'm trying to think of who I think would win a game. So maybe a neutral court game if I'm comparing two teams. So in a sense, those November games still inform the level of quality I think of a team, but it might, at this point in the year, start having a little bit of a lower weight than recent results. If a team has strung together, hey, maybe 10 good games and they had some stinkers a dozen games ago, I might look on that, and soften the blow for those a little bit. But that's something I'm still kind of trying to decide for myself, exactly how to weigh those, because I don't want to get into a situation where just this last week is too heavily played in the rankings when a team like we just mentioned, Carnegie Mellon had a good win against Emory, right? And they lost in a very close game at Rochester, which ended up being a close game. So like, hey, those are some good results. I wouldn't rank them. To me, their total body of work, even somewhat recently, is not to that level. Um, but there may be a team to watch if they look very strong as we go a few more weeks into UAA play. Then maybe I discount some of those early season results. But to me, I'm still considering a team's total body of work. But I really want to keep trying to focus myself on who do I think would win a neutral court game. If we could roll them out there 100 times, who's going to win more than 50 of those games between any two teams, and then move on from there. So I don't know if I do a perfect job of that every week, but I try to do that. And I also try to start from scratch to a large degree. So I'm not just moving teams from where they were the week before, but I'm trying to think of it with fresh eyes. And I've had a team like WPI. They've really, really ping ponged on my board. They've been kind of in the top half early on. Then I think they fell out for a while, and then they were back in low, and then they're back in the middle of my ballot. So trying to look at it from fresh eyes as well at this point in the year.
And as I was observing, not trying to jump into any of the banter, just what I noticed was a few of you voters were kind of discussing and trying to, I think more than anything, understand each other's perspective and maybe challenging each other to try to parse out what those reasonings may be between certain teams. Because at this point, you have teams that have played a weaker schedule, teams that have played harder schedule, and in all of this, what I never saw was anyone saying anything about what they expected from a team or um or anything like that. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know that that's right or wrong. I personally, rather than rather than saying that maybe there isn't a good answer, if there's a team like even Williams, you have highly ranked up here. If you look at who Williams has beaten, it's not actually a very impressive resume. So here we are 2 months into the season. If you're looking for really good wins, Williams doesn't really have them. Now, I think that it might still be fair to say that Williams is a team you really liked going into the year, and maybe they haven't proven that correct, but with their results, they also haven't necessarily proven that wrong. Does that make sense? So we're like another team like that would be Case Western Reserve, right? They played a very weak non-conference schedule. When you're in the UAA, you can get away with that because you know you're going to have a conference slate that's loaded with really good teams, and just by playing that conference slate, you're going to end up with an SOS. So if you can not pile up some early season wins and then hold your own in conference play, you're going to be looking pretty good at the end of the season, right? So but a team like Case now is into UAA play, and they're 1-2, right? They dropped two of those first games. So it's like, well, are they rankable? Are they not rankable? Um, Maybe but really this is the first time that we've really gotten anything to say, are they or are they not what we thought?
Yeah, I think that could be a challenge when you're talking about weak schedules. Although at this time of the year, I think you're right. You can say they haven't done anything to discount my expectations. But when I'm looking at results, wins and losses, and kind of the strength of their opponent, to me, I also really look at how well they're beating those opponents, margin of victory to some degree. For me, all along, up until even just last week, I was probably one of the lower voters, or at least the voters that I knew of on a team like Case. To me, they hadn't always beaten the teams by margins that I would have expected. So even though they were winning games, there was a few too many single digit margins against teams that you maybe shouldn't do that against regularly, in absence of any other good wins, right? So they didn't have anything else to hang their hat on. I think a team like Williams, now I don't have their schedule in front of me, so maybe I'm wrong. They've maybe done a little bit better in that regard of beating teams by quality margins. So I like to look at that as well. And so to me, at this point in the year, you either have good wins, good results, ways we can point to say, yeah, you are a good team. Um, you you take a little bit of the NYU approach that I'm just gonna to clock really bad teams. Now, okay, at some point they have to do that in UAA play, and they haven't really done that so far. So NYU's out of my ballot. But if you continue to do that against bad teams, then yeah, I guess to some degree your results are in line with your expectations. So I'll keep you where you are. We know Williams is going to have plenty of tests in the NESCAC, and we know these UAA teams are going to have plenty of tests. So I'm not really worried about figuring that out there. But I think for me, it's still more of the result in the season matching what I think they should be, rather than it's still my preseason expectation that I just haven't changed too much.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting looking at it from the perspective of have they proven it versus well they haven't disproven it necessarily. So anyway,
Right.
just thought I'd get your take on it. And also for reference, we did an episode this summer before the season started talking with Bob Quillman, a top 25 voter. Now at that time, Matt, when we were doing that episode, you were not a top 25 voter.
Right.
But now that you are, good to get some of your thoughts and uh, really talking with Bob, we did it kind of generally speaking about his approach as a voter to the top 25 poll, not specifically to the upcoming season
Yeah.
poll. So definitely refer you to that for more information, a longer deep dive into his approach to being a voter. And again, that's just one out of 25, and you're another one out of 25. So
Right.
a lot of
Yeah.
different approaches out there, and that's why it's interesting to see actually you guys publicly doing that on Twitter, not just revealing your ballots, but even some of the discussion back and forth in terms of your evaluation, how you're weighting certain things or view teams differently. And also it's really great to see. It's not like necessarily any of you are trying to convince the other
No.
of their point of view. It's just for broader understanding
Yeah.
among the group there. Yeah.
Gaining understanding, exchanging ideas. I like that we have different approaches. I'm not trying to convince anyone of my approach or that my ranking is correct. I think if we wanted to just have one way of doing it, we would just pick a computer system or average the computer systems. And I think those are all great too. But the point of the human poll is to get people's opinions. And some people eye test it more than others. I think all of us need to eye test it a little bit. Some people use data but weigh those data differently. I like that we have a different approach, that someone might think a team is unranked and another the same team is number 12. And I think then once you combine those across the 25 voters, then I think you end up with a pretty good poll.
Also want to plug the panels that Dave McHugh puts together of voters on those Hoopsville segments. I always find those really interesting. So another good spot to check out to get a little bit more inside the minds of some top 25 voters, how they're seeing different teams and agreeing or disagreeing with each other.
Yeah, for sure.
So Matt, that moves on to our main topic for the week. With a top 25 poll, you have no set criteria. You have 25 individuals who can approach it in 25 different ways. But as we're getting here into the winter, heading towards spring, we really want to turn an eye towards what's going to happen after the regular season. And that means NCAA regional ranking and NCAA tournament selection time, which does give us defined criteria, which is, subjectively implemented as they decide how they want to see and weight things. But that does give us a set criteria to evaluate. And we started mixing that in a little bit last week when we took a look at the top three in each of the 10 regions. And this week, we're going to do that again, trying to look at the conferences and determine which conferences out there could see actually two or more teams make it into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. So we're gonna go through every 45, all 45 conferences plus the independents, and we're gonna put them into four buckets. And here's the way I see it. You have some conferences that no matter what happens, they're only going to get one team in. It's going to be the Pool A winner, and they're not going to have anyone else that's an at-large contender for those Pool C berths. There's another group of teams that I'm going to call them multi-bid possible. That means you might get a Pool C contender, but you have work left to do to get there. You don't look like you have a very strong candidate right now, but you can kind of read the crystal ball and say, hey, if a team gets hot, they might work themselves onto the right side of the bubble. You have another group of teams that are multi-bid likely, but only if you have an upset. So you have a really strong team at the top, but they're the only ones really in at-large contention. And if they lose in the conference tournament, then you can have two bids, or you will almost definitely get two bids, but otherwise you only get one. And then you have the slam dunk multiple. You're going to get two plus no matter what. Doesn't matter which order they finish in. You're going to have multiple bids into the tournament. So as we said last week, major shout out to Drew at D3 Bubble. I use his data to check mine. I use his data sometimes above mine, and it's just another great resource. If you don't follow him, you should. If you use Twitter at D3 Bubble, he also has a link to a website where he posts his data, and I think he does daily or near daily updates on that from January and February. So follow his stuff, great stuff, and I use it a lot. So thank you, Drew. So first of all, before we get to the real slides, I just want to call out we have 1.5 0-bid leagues. That's the CCS, the Collegiate Conference of the South. They're a new conference this year. They haven't gone through that 2-year waiting period to get an automatic qualifier, so they will not have a Pool A bid. And we went through the math. We have no Pool B bids available this year. That's actually in the handbook. We did an episode on the breakdown of bids in this year. So there's no Pool B bids. So that means their only access is through Pool C. And I don't think the CCS has anyone in contention for a Pool C bid. So they're going to be a 0-bid league this year, unfortunately. If there was a Pool B bid, Maryville would, I think, be looking good for that. But unfortunately, there's not. And then the half conference is the independents. There is, again, no Pool B bid, and so there's going to be none of those teams have a strong enough resume to factor into Pool C. So those two conferences, or that conference and the independents, out of the way, we'll move on to the 44 who have Pool A access. And the first group we're going to talk about are single bid conferences, and I really hope these tables show up on your phones as you watch your YouTubes. And if not, then I'm sorry. But I'll just go through the single bid conferences. For all of these lists, I'm showing the conference and the leader of the conference. That leader is not always the current standings leader. Sometimes it's just the team with the best Pool C resume right now. So you might quibble at me about, well, this team's not actually leading the conference. Yeah, but if we're talking about Pool C access, then they might be the best one at the table right now. And plus, we have weeks to go before anything happens out. So anyway, that's what I mean by leader. It's probably the team that right now looks like the strongest in Pool C. So single bid conferences, we have the AEC, currently Newman's on top, 714 winning percentage, 483 SOS. You can see the next column over projected. That's just my spreadsheet doing a little bit of a math to see kind of what their expected performance might be going forward against their schedule and what the SOS might be. Now, this only factors in for all of these teams games that are currently on their schedule. So conference tournament games aren't shown. In some cases, that could raise or lower strength of schedule. So there's a little bit of sloppiness here, but this could bring us to a end of February type number. So a lot of these on this slide you'll see is the main reason is strength of schedules are not that good. A lot of these conferences, their leaders only have strength of schedules in the upper 400s or low 500s, and that's usually disqualifying for Pool C, unless you had just an insane winning percentage. But again, none of these teams do. So AEC, kind of Newman's on top, but going to have to win the Pool A. The AMCC, the CSAC, the Cognac, the Heartland, the MASCAC, the Midwest Conference, the NAC, the Northern Athletics Conference, the New England College Conference, the Presidents, the Skyline, the SLIAC, the UEC, the UMAC, and the USA South. I think these are all single bid conferences. Win your Pool A, and that's the only way you're going to be safe. There's no Pool C, unfortunately, for you all. I don't think that's going to be a factor. So one bid only here.
And what jumps out to me here is if you go down the projected column here, anyone who's above 700 winning percentage has a strength of schedule number below 500. Anyone who has a strength of schedule number above 500 has a winning percentage below 700. So
Okay.
if you want to just use as I always like the 700, 500 as just a quick first pass. Not that being above on both of those should have you feeling good about anything. But if you don't have at least those across the board, generally you've got a big problem. Unless you get down to one of those final one or two bids maybe, and you have something on the board that is truly exceptional.
Yeah, you're probably end of the bubble at best if you can't meet those criteria. On this list here, if I'm going to be wrong about one conference, it might be the UMAC. There might be a way that Bethany Lutheran, you see that projected line of 830, 494. Let's say some of their non-conference opponents win more games that SOS gets above 500. They get to their conference tournament final. Maybe there's another team that helps boost their SOS there. I don't know the landscape right now, but maybe let's say they get that SOS closer to 515, then maybe Bethany Lutheran's a player in Pool C. So you could maybe make an argument that they should be on the next slide that I'll get to, but that's maybe the one conference here that has some prayer of a Pool C there. But then that being said, I will move on to the small chance conferences. There's work left to do here. You might find someone in Pool C contention, but right now you don't have anyone in slam dunk position. So the leader here again is the closest team to that point, maybe. In the American Rivers, I actually think it's Central just by the winning percentage and SOS numbers. They're currently at a 786 winning percentage. The SOS is going to be a little bit of a struggle for them, but projecting through what is a fairly strong American Rivers conference, I'm coming up with something in the neighborhood of 748, 523. Now, they're also going to have regionally ranked opponents added onto that to make that really a Pool C viable resume. And I don't really see that on their schedule, to be honest. So I think they're going to have a hard time, but maybe they beat that projection. Maybe they get really hot and do something like close to winning out up until their conference final. Maybe that gets Central into the conversation. And I think that's going to be the theme to a lot of these teams. They're going to have to do something a little bit extraordinary between now and the conference final to get into the conversation. The Commonwealth Coast Conference, Western New England, really nice looking 856 winning percentage, but again, 857. Their strength of schedule is probably going to be coming down through conference play, putting them on the wrong side of that kind of 500 line. Really in Pool C to feel any pretty good about anything, you really want to be 525 or better. Now, if you're between 500 and 525, you can get in if you have a nice looking winning percentage like Western New England likely will have. But again, they're going to need the ROs to supplement that. I don't know that they necessarily have. I think maybe they have one kind of in the bank right now. And you're also going to need to see that SOS come up a little bit. I don't think Nichols, who might be the next team there, I don't think they have really a resume to date that's going to put them in the zone of being in that kind of Pool C discussion. Out of the Empire 8, Utica, also kind of Nazareth is in a similar position in the Empire 8. You can kind of think of them together. Resume looks really strong right now. 857, 551. That's very playable. Looks like through the conference play, though, that's going to come down and projected them more like 511. That's probably a little soft for Pool C, but again, add a little bit to the winning percentage or some RROs. Maybe that's playable. And again, similar things go for Nazareth. You could see both of those teams get in should one win the Pool A. Catholic in the landmark, they weren't ranked for a long time, even though they were undefeated for so long because their schedule was so soft. That's reflected here. Sub 500. Current strength of schedule projected to be also sub 500. Something's going to have to happen to change that for Catholic to be in a Pool C position. And I don't think, Scranton or anyone else in the landmark is going to be really in the Pool C conversation unless they go on a terrible run here. Out of the Liberty League, it's Ithaca, it's RPI. But again, they're a little bit more unique in that they have kind of just middling results here. Look at the projected line for Ithaca, 765, 532. Neither of those numbers are particularly disqualifying, but neither of them jump out at you unless you had a bunch of regionally ranked opponent wins to point to. I don't know that Ithaca does, so I think they might find themselves on the wrong side of the bubble. Similar for RPI, they've taken some losses recently. I don't know that they're going to be the strongest contender either. So both of those teams going to be looking to add to their resume in the last, where we have month and a half here or so until the selections are made to try to get their names called. The MAC Commonwealth, Alvernia, they're kind of similar to Ithaca there, that they have more middling results. 750, 571 looks really strong right now. I think both of those are going to fall back a little bit. Maybe 739, 551 is viable, but that's really going to be bubblish. It's not going to be anything that you feel very confident about. On the bubble, that strength of schedule is not going to be high enough to be overwhelmingly impressive, and that winning percentage is going to be a little bit low compared to others. So, maybe you're in the conversation, but you really need that pool A to feel good about being selected with that resume if that holds. Out of the MAC, Freedom DeSales, similar conversation that we've had before, probably an 800 plus winning percentage, but I don't really see that strength of schedule getting above 500. And if it does, it'll be the low 500s. Committee hasn't typically looked at those favorably. That's going to be a very similar story to Calvin that we see next here. I'm kind of projecting them to finish with their strength of schedule in like the 504, 505 range. Maybe you have a scenario where they split with Trine or they win out up to an MIAA championship game, or where they play Trine and lose that game. And if that strength of schedule gets up to 815 maybe, and we're talking about a winning percentage that's closer to 850, or sorry, 515 strength of schedule, 850 winning percentage, then maybe they're on the Pool C bubble as well. But I think for Calvin, you're going to need to win that Pool A, probably Trine as well. I picked Calvin here over Trine because Trine's strength of schedule is sub 500 right now, and that's probably not going up through MIAA play. So, they're going to probably hit the Pool C board if they get to that spot with a sub 500 strength of schedule. That's not really viable. So, unfortunately for Trine, I think both these MIAA teams are not really in the Pool C mix at the moment. From the MIAC St. John's, they're one of these kind of more middling resumes, 766 and 526 is the projected numbers. 526 is really kind of like the low strength of schedule line. And if you're there with a 766 winning percentage, then, maybe you're on the board and maybe you get taken, but you probably just get left there with a resume that's neither hot nor cold. And it's just kind of, it's just there. Whitworth out of the Northwest Conference, they're going to have a big problem of finding regionally ranked opponent wins, I think, based on, I don't know that anyone else in that conference is going to be ranked in Region 10. So kind of what they have already in the bank is what they get. 752, 544, maybe that's Pool C playable if they get there, but they have work to do to get there. Their current resume is 667, 620, so a very high strength of schedule. I think that'll come down. So we'll really have to see what Whitworth ends up with, and they're going to have to put themselves in a better bubble position to feel good going into Selection Monday if they should fail to win the Northwest Conference Pool A. Barry, another story with a strength of schedule that might not be above 500, and if it's not in that 515 to 525 range, it's not going to look super strong there. Claremont Mud Scripps, if you're looking for a team that should be on the next slide with a better chance, maybe it's the Skyac. Claremont Mud Scripps currently 857, 507 strength of schedule. I think their resume, as far as schedule wise, is going to go up during Skyac play. And if they can kind of hold court and stay in that 850 range, then maybe 850, 520 ish is good. They already have a win against Mary Hardin Baylor, as we remember right from the beginning of the season. That could look very strong by the end of the year. So maybe they do work themselves into Pool C, to the correct side of the bubble, and that way the Skyac can get two teams should they not win the Pool A. That's going to be a tough race in the Skyac between Claremont Mud Scripps. I think Redlands and Pomona Pitzer is probably going to have something to say about that as well. So these are kind of the multi-bid possible conferences, as I will call them.
And these are the teams that the message basically is just don't lose. Ideally, all the way through winning your conference tournament to secure the Pool A, because anything else, and you're really putting it out of your control.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Right.
have,
So you got to, yeah, with this list, we start seeing some more acceptable looking strength of schedules, but they're going to have to do something to boost that winning percentage even higher than what is projected. Or like in the case of Catholic, where it doesn't look like that strength of schedule number is going to end where it really needs to be. They just have to do something if they are going to need a pool seed to really stand out. And if that strength is, or if that winning percentage falls to like below 900, that's probably not going to be enough. Now, currently sitting 933, if they can run the table all the way maybe through a championship loss,
Yeah.
but something different, still is probably not going to have them feeling good. But really, the message is the same whether you're named as one of the leaders here, or like you mentioned with Trine, or maybe Whitman in the Northwest Conference, right? So you just have to keep winning. You can't rely on any outside help, because these are the teams that get hurt when there are upsets, and a surefire Pool C resume suddenly becomes a Pool C resume because they didn't secure a Pool A. So when we're talking about bid thieves, these are the kinds of profiles that miss out because of those upsets come conference tournament time.
Yep, these are definitely the teams. They need to do something extraordinary down the stretch. They need to think about running the table or something like that, right? And then they also need to hope for very few upsets in conference tournaments, just like you said. Exactly. All right, the next group of teams, or the next group of conferences, are conferences that have one strong contender, but kind of only one strong contender. It's a little there's a little fuzziness there. But really, if the team doesn't win, then they have multiple bids. But if the favorite wins, it's probably just one bid, right? So I said there was some squishiness there. One of the squishy conferences is maybe the ASC. Right now, I think Mary Hardin Baylor looks the best, but I believe it's East Texas Baptist that could maybe be working themselves into the mix. If I don't, I think they're kind of maybe on the wrong side of the bubble right now. But if they and Mary Hardin Baylor both have strong kind of end of the conference play here. I think that they can maybe both work themselves in. But for right now, I think only Mary Hardin Baylor is looking quite strong. I think they have some regionally ranked wins in there as well that they've been building up to kind of bolster that resume. In the coast to coast, Christopher Newport, they're kind of a lock. There's no locks in Division 3 until the second to the last week of the season. But as far as locks go at this time of the year, Christopher Newport is one of those. Maybe also Mary Washington can stay on the right side of the bubble or work their way back onto the bubble, but their resume is not that strong. They would not be feeling super great, I think, if they were, sitting on that bubble waiting for selection Monday. They would have a good chance of not getting called. They might get in, but you could easily see the coast to coast being a one bid league should Christopher Newport win that tournament. Um, Similarly, and kind of surprisingly, maybe the CCIW, uh, if Wheaton wins that conference tournament and no one else has really stepped up there, that could be a conference with a lot of resumes that have, upper 600 winning percentages that are going to be relying on strength of schedules and regionally ranked wins. And that's a lot of bubble conversations that are uncomfortable. And so if they lose, I think they're looking very good right now. So if Wheaton loses in the CCIW tournament, then they're definitely in. But should they win, I don't think there's another team that's just a slam dunk to get in right now. They could work themselves into that position. Someone like an Elmhurst or a North Park or Carthage could figure in that. But I don't think they're have to includes right now. I think there could includes. Next up is
GNAC.
the GNAC, yeah, and that's St. Joseph or bust, right, for the Pool C. They should win the Pool A. If not, they should be fine on Pool C. But yeah, there's no other viable candidate that's going to happen there. Same for the Little East. I think it's going to be Keene State, and maybe you can talk about Western Connecticut, but I think they're kind of bubble out for me. If they really go on a run, then maybe they work themselves into a Pool C position. But really, Keene State is the favorite. Should they lose, they're definitely in. The NCAC, I think Worcester looks pretty good. I think if they don't win that conference tournament, and there's some other good teams there, they could get beat by Wabash fairly easily, let's say. Then I think they look good to be in. Now, again, there's no locks in Division 3 until we get right up to the end of the season. So things could happen if they have an extended stretch where they're not performing well. But I think Worcester looks just about as strong as anyone in that region, outside of maybe Mount Union, John Carroll. So I think that they can get in should they not win the NCAC tournament. In the NUMAC, WPI looks good. They've kind of taken the command of that conference, I think, over the likes of Babson, etc. I don't think anyone else is really going to be in a position for Pool C other than WPI. Now, if they stumble, they might have some strength of schedule issues, but I think overall their resume will be good and they'll be firmly in the Pool C conversation. St. Thomas, I think, as well, out of the SCAC. Do we say SCAC? Southern Collegiate Athletic Conference. I think their resume is very, very strong. 848, 562 projected, currently at a 597 strength of schedule. I think they're the only team in that conference that's likely in. So if they don't win, then they'll get the Pool C rather easily. The SUNYAC, Oswego State, um, maybe Cortland can work their way into the conversation, but they probably don't. It's probably just Oswego. And another surprising team and another semi-squishy conference, the WIAC. I think UW Oshkosh has maybe climbed back on top after beating La Crosse this week. I think La Crosse is probably also on the Pool C bubble. They're probably on the okay side of it right now, but I think there's going to be a lot of losses in the WIAC, I think, this year because there's a lot of teams that are evenly matched and no one's super far ahead of the other ones. Right now, UW Oshkosh looks really good with strength of schedules up near 600, just south of that. So I think they're looking good on the Pool C side of things. Um, so right now, let's say we started the WIAC tournament right now, and La Crosse won it, and Oshkosh was second place. So then I think they both get in. If Oshkosh wins it right now, La Crosse is sitting there thinking, well, we better not have a lot of upsets because our resume just got, um, you know, a little bit tougher. But again, it's all going to depend on how things obviously finish up and what the regionally ranked opponents results look like at the end of the year as well. So these also similar to the previous slide. The fewer upsets, then the more likely it is that these conferences could get a second team in. But other than that, hey, we're looking at maybe this top team, and if they win the conference tournament, the other teams might be sitting there thinking, "Oh, geez, I should have done a little bit more."
Yeah, these teams have more margin of error to work with than what we saw on the previous slide. And if you're a team listed or even a team near the top of one of the conferences listed on the previous slide, the teams here are the ones that you really want to be rooting for
Mm-hmm.
down the stretch, and especially conference tournament time. You want them to be winning their conference tournament, securing that pool A, because that is likely preserving an at-large bid for one of those other bubble teams or behind them.
Yep. Particularly Oswego in the SUNYAC, St. Thomas in the Southern Collegiate, WPI, Keene State, St. Joseph. You just want these teams to take care of business. Christopher Newport, if they just win their conference tournaments, that make sure that there's no bubble popping there, and then teams on the previous slide start getting in. So these are definitely the teams that you're going to be rooting for. Again, the landscape is going to shift a little bit in the next whatever it is 5 or 6 weeks, but when you start to think about what the bubble's going to look like and we get to conference tournament play, like these are the teams you want them just to win out. All right. And the next slide, the final group, these are, don't even worry about it. We're getting multiple teams in from this conference. It doesn't matter what order we finish in the tournament. It doesn't really matter who wins it. We're getting more than one. In the Centennial, that's Johns Hopkins. It's Swarthmore. Now,
You
if
could
some,
st-
oh yeah,
you
go
could
ahead.
still have a team if a six
Yep,
seed wins the ODAC tournament. That would be problematic, but if it's
yep.
one of the top couple seeds, that would be fine.
Yeah, so if Muhlenberg wins the Centennial, then that's a bid thief probably, and we're getting three in likely here. But in the other scenarios, these two are definitely getting in. So either we're having two or we're having a third because we have a bid thief probably. In the NESCAC, Williams looks like they're in the top spot, but you also have Middlebury and Trinity looking strong. And I wouldn't rule out Tufts even or Wesleyan now has won maybe like 8 straight, and they could find themselves onto the bubble conversation as well. Is more Middlebury and Trinity than Tufts and Wesleyan. But by the end of NESCAC play, we could be talking about all those teams. In the NJAC, it's Stockton on top. They're looking like one of the best resumes in the country. But Montclair State, Rowan, they could also be very much in the Pool C mix. We could be talking about Keene as well. They're a little bit more bubble out for me, but I think 2, 3 NJAC teams is definitely a possibility. I think I'd be shocked if we only had one from the NJAC at this point, the way things are looking. In the OAC, definitely we're at Mount Union and we're at John Carroll. Both of those teams are looking very strong if they take care of business. I think the OAC is looking like a two-bid league. Maybe Heidelberg could work themselves into the mix as well, three-bid league. I don't know. Heidelberg's a lot more bubbly than the other two at this point, but another team in the mix. The ODAC has a bevy of teams: Randolph-Macon, Guilford, Roanoke, Hampton-Sydney, all looking like they could be strong in contention. Could we be talking about a four-bid ODAC? That would be amazing. I think right now we look really good for three. I think three or four is definite possibility. And in the UAA, similar story. Rochester, Emory, WashU, NYU, they all have a good shot depending on how they perform in UAA play. And I think Case Western and Brandeis, if either of those get really hot, I think they could be in the mix as well. Case in particular is going to have a strength of schedule problem, even after going through the UAA, which is going to just boost that SOS every week. It's still going to be, I think, on the lower end of Pool C just because their non-conference was so weak. That'll also hurt them if they ever go into the secondary criteria. Their non-conference strength of schedule will look low. But the UAA, you have almost 75% of that conference alive for a Pool C bid, and that's going to be the only conference that doesn't have a conference tournament as well. So it's really just going to be based on how the regular season finishes up because their regular season champion for that conference wins the Pool A.
It's the one conference we don't have to worry about a bid thief from
Mm-hmm.
because whoever comes out on top is going to have a great Pool C resume, and you don't have to worry about them losing because there's no conference tournament.
But there wasn't going to be a bid thief anyway. They could have a tournament, and whoever won that tournament was likely to have, a pool C anyway. I mean, unless
Hey, U Chicago
Carnegie
could have won that tournament.
Carnegie Mellon does something weird. So yeah, you could always have a bid thief, but we're not getting one from the UAA. But they're gonna have three teams. Look, there's no way they don't have three teams. They might have four teams. Probably not five, but I think it's three or four out of the UAA. Definitely a multi-bid league. So I think UAA is gonna be the most. NESCAC and ODAC are next. These all three of those conferences could have three or four. OAC is probably two. NJAC could be two, could be three. I think it's more likely two. Centennial probably has two. So uh, basically, as long as something doesn't crazy doesn't happen, one of these teams doesn't tank. These are the conferences that's going to take up. I know, what did we just list? Probably like 10 to 12 bids, Pool C bids out of our 20. You even take out the leaders. Centennial gets an extra one. Let's say there's two more from the NESCAC. There's another two from the NJAC, OAC, a couple more ODACs, a couple more. I think that's like 11 bids that we kind of just gave out based on just this slide. So now we have like something between 8 to 10 left for all the previous slides that we talked about of how do teams that might need to build their resume, hope for no upsets. That's why, because half of them are gone right here.
Yeah, that's a good way to lay it out. Like you mentioned, Heidelberg, that'd be the potential bid thief. So if you're looking at this scenario, Heidelberg would be one of those teams that you want to get knocked down a little bit, right? Because you've got Mount Union and John Carroll looking so strong. You don't want there to be even another contender or someone to be able to be right there, maybe steal the Pool A, and then you've got three teams solid out of the OAC.
Yep. Yeah. If you're a team on this slide before or the slide before that, you're if you're Calvin, you want Case Western to get chewed up in UAA play and keep themselves out of Pool C contention and keep them out of the Region 7 regional rankings. You want Heidelberg to lose their close games to Mount Union and John Carroll and Marietta, and you want Keene to not be able to get past Stockton and Montclair State and just keep themselves out of the mix here so that your bubble gets thinner even before you get to kind of conference tournament weekend. And then once you're there, you just got to hope for no upset. So definitely the races to watch. Make sure that in these last two slides that you don't get any of these unexpected teams back up into the Pool C mix. If you're a bubble team, you got to take care of your own business. Increase your resume now, these next 6 weeks. But really, you have to get into that conference tournament and you have to plan on winning your Pool A. That's really the only way you're safe. If you're not one of these six conferences here, You got to win your Pool A. It's the only way you're safe in Division Three.
Love it.
That's it.
Good job, team.
And again, the caveat: this is January 16th that we're releasing this episode. There's obviously a lot of basketball to play. These numbers, these current numbers, these projected numbers are going to change. We're just peering into our crystal ball, giving you a little bit of a look into the future that might happen. Teams are going to go on unexpected runs. Teams are going to have unexpected losses. Things are going to change. So this is not forever and ever amen. This is just what it looks like right now. But I think you can kind of see that these conferences are the conferences we've been talking about all along, and these are the conferences that are likely to stay in that mix. Um, so it's just like a for planning and informational purposes only, not guaranteed to be 100% correct.
Love the disclaimer. Perfect.
All right, let's move on, shall we? Here was last
Let's
week's
do it.
picks. Last week's picks, Whitworth was +2 at Whitman. They won that game handily. Zach, you win that one. Spalding was +8 at Fontbonne. Fontbonne won by 13. Zach, you won that one. Texas Dallas was 7.5-point underdogs at East Texas Baptist. They won that game by 6. Zach, you win that game.
I like this pattern
I
emerging
know
here.
you're doing great. And Catholic was 30-point favorites against Goucher, and this line was way too big, so we both took Goucher. Love you, Dave. But unfortunately, the line was not big enough in actuality. Catholic waxed Goucher, and they won that game by, 47 points. That was just Sunday night, the late game. So neither
That
of
was
us get
actually,
that.
yeah, that was actually neutral court, not at Catholic.
Yeah,
So
that was at
should
Penn,
have
wasn't it?
corrected the slide there. Yeah, at the Palestra.
That's the reason. If I knew it was neutral court, I would have picked Catholic to cover. So I think we void
That's
that
right.
pick. And then the D3 Datacast game of the week was Calvin at Hope. And now imagine that you are a co-host of the D3 Datacast, and imagine that you pick Hope to cover this game. Can you even envision a scenario of that happening?
I
32 points later, Calvin is the easy cover, and I get this one.
Yeah, and I couldn't be happier.
Zach, I was 1-4 on the week, and I
You
got
got
the
the
one that mattered.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with Goucher there because I thought I was going to be in for the perfect 4-1 week, but alas, I finished the week 3-2.
It's pretty good. Yeah, the perfect 4-1 would have been perfect for you. I don't think this really counts as an emotional hedge because getting a pick right on D3 Datacast Pick'em, I don't think is a big enough reward to if that went the other way. But no, I was very happy to see that result at sitting there in person at DeVos Field House at the Calvin at Hope game. 32 points. That's a great result. I happened to chat for just a couple minutes with Coach Saul after the game at Adrian this past Saturday, and I told him just maybe do that every time. And he did not indicate that he thought that that would be a realistic possibility. So unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the game. I don't think you just say game plan, win by 32, and that's going to be it. But was the biggest win I think for maybe either side since 1977. At least the biggest Calvin margin of victory. Definitely. So that was a fun one.
And it looked just as good from my family room here on the other side of the state. Um, yeah, although in my defense, I watched some of the times that Kelvin struggled earlier in this season leading up to this game, and I had some horrible memories of last season and the matchup problems that Hope gave Calvin last year when they, took all 3 games. So I really was not expecting to see what I saw last Wednesday night, but I was really impressed with Calvin really flipping the script on what happened from last year, being the aggressor, being decisive, and they really just took it to Hope. And so part of it wasn't just an emotional hedge, but I really had concerns. Jalen Overway's been great as a 6'9" freshman center for Calvin. He had a big game in that win against Oshkosh and really kind of burst onto the scene. But since then, there's been just a lot of issues. It seems like feeding the post, getting it to him cleanly, him receiving it cleanly, and uh, yeah, with Hope being the more aggressive team, I felt in their matchups last year, I felt like there might be a lot of those problems. But yeah, credit Kelvin coming out prepared, energetic. They were the aggressor. They were decisive. Really looked a lot different than any of the Calvin Hope games we saw last year. So couldn't be happier to be wrong. And yeah, I'll happily take the L here.
Yeah, it was the best game the Calvin Knights have played all season. Couldn't have happened at a better time, and I have absolutely no notes. Do that every time. That'd be great. Here's the picks leaderboard. As we said, you went 3-2, I went 1-4, so that takes you to 22-23, just a game below 500. I'm 27-18, still standing 5 games above you, so I have a week cushion. So still doing good.
We'll see if we can make it up this week.
So here is this week's slate. We'll go through them one by one. The first game is Roanoke. The computer has them as 7-point underdogs at Guilford. Zach, your pick.
Going with Roanoke. There have been times I've been scared off by big numbers this year as we've been doing our picks, and I've been burned by it. I really thought about that, and my initial gut reaction was to not be scared off by it and go with Guilford because I really like what they've done. But I actually I decided to dig in a little bit more on some of the numbers and season stats than I actually typically do, which maybe is one of the problems of why I'm hovering right around 500. I don't know. But I really didn't see a lot in there that differentiated. If anything, if you're if you're doing just some box score scouting, it looks like Roanoke has been the more efficient scoring team on the year. Um, so just without a really good reason to go to lay 7 points, I will take the Maroons.
Yeah, I'm going to come up similar with you. I'm taking Roanoke against this +7 number. I have Guilford number 9 on my ballot, and I have Roanoke 14. So for me, that's pretty close. And 7 points. I know it's a road game, but I think Roanoke's going to keep this close. I bet Guilford wins, but 7 with maybe how even I think these teams could be was a little bit too big for me. Next is Stockton +6.5 at Rowan.
Um, yeah, Rowan got an 11-point road win earlier in the year, so 6.5 here. Laying 6.5 at home. I'll do it. Rowan.
All right, I will go against you on this one and take Stockton. I think Stockton has been playing pretty well lately. I know Rowan's been good too, but I think this is Stockton's one of their chances to put a lock on their position at the top of the NJAC, +6.5. I think they're going to keep this one close. I think they could win this one on the road at Rowan, so I'm going with Stockton. Next one up, Claremont Mud Scripts, 1-point favorites at Redlands.
Yeah, I all right. So the longer I watch, the more convinced I am of the by the people who say, hey, in conference play, the home team is a default favorite. And I think you have two teams near the top of the SCIAC there. So with that line of thinking, I will go with Redlands.
Taking the home favorite. I'm gonna take your opposite approach to that, and I'm gonna go Claremont Mud Scripts. I know Redlands, I think, is actually on top of the standings right now as we sit. I believe Claremont Mud Scripts has been the higher rated team for me all season. I know it's on the road, but only 1 point. I'm really looking for the Stags here to maybe um, prove my belief in them correct so far. Going to a UAA play, the next game, Wash U is a half-point favorite at Case Western next week. Zach, your pick.
Yeah, similar to the last one here. Really, what you're just doing is picking a winner with just a half-point line there. Uh, Going on the road is tough in the UAA as it is in most conferences. Here, we talked about Case Western Reserve's profile earlier in the year. They really need the win. I'm going to take them at home.
All right, I'm going to go with Wash U. They're a team that I was a little bit lower on early in the season. It seemed like they had to find themselves a little bit. I really think they have the last few weeks. Case is maybe a team that hasn't proven it to me, so I'm taking um, the half point on the road, and I'm going to believe in the Wash U Bears. And then this week's D3 Datacast game of the week. This is a Monday game, so this is the day this episode drops. So hopefully you're watching this on the Monday. If you're not, you might already know the result. But it's Middlebury, and it's +7 at Keene State.
Yeah, Keene State has been impressive this year, but I think they've been beneficiary of a little bit of a weaker schedule than some of other top teams. Middlebury, I don't know, getting 7 seems like a lot here. I don't know if maybe they could get caught looking ahead to a road game at Williams at the end of the week, but 7 points is enough for me to pick Middlebury, at least against the spread.
Yeah, big week for Middlebury. I'm going to go to Keene State. Right now, for me, Middlebury is I think 24th in my poll. Keene State is up there in the top 10. So 7 points. Yeah, that's a big number, but it's at home. If these teams are the relative strength I think they are, then I will be going with the Owls. So that is this week's pick.
Woo-hoo.
We've got a lot of differences there. So not always that many, but 4 different ones. So we an opportunity for you to catch up maybe.
Like last week.
We're going into upset watch. I can already hear the people complaining about this one not being a true upset. I don't know. We have Randolph Macon at Roanoke. So I'll give you my justification for including this as an upset watch. We don't know. So we're recording this on Sunday. We don't know what the poll is going to look like when it comes out on Monday evening. Randolph Macon, I think, was 2 last week. They'll probably be 2. I know of at least one voter who said they're switching their vote from St. Joseph to Randolph Macon. So they're probably gaining ground. Roanoke, as of last poll, was not ranked. And in fact, I was the only Roanoke voter. They were getting 8 poll points, and I think I voted them number 18. I've submitted my ballot this week. They're on there. I've seen a couple other people post that Roanoke's on there. So maybe there's a chance that Roanoke gets into the top 25 poll. But one of the goals of the upset watch was to kind of be a ranked versus unranked team that we thought had a chance to lose. But anyway, I know it's a road game. It's in the ODAC. No one would be like flip their lid if Randolph Macon lost this one. But as of the last poll, this is the number 2 team who was receiving number 1 votes against a team who was only getting votes from this guy, and so I thought that counted for upset watch.
Yeah, and as we were talking just before the episode, we also were discussing how, last week when we were taking a look at the top of each projected region, and just how solid Randolph Macon looks. They've put themselves back in that position after kind of a slow start of it being a surprise when they lose. So if they do, I think whether or not Roanoke slips into the top 25 or not, there's going to be probably a good enough distance, and just the way that Randolph Macon has solidified their season, um, you know, we're going to count it. And also this game, Matt, I don't know if it's correct on the slide. It's January 21st.
Oh, I probably failed to update that. So January 21st. Yes, January 15 is the day we're recording this. That's not correct. So January 21, and I just checked the efficiency ratings say Randolph Macon is favored by 3.5 here. So should be a 1 to 2 possession game. Could be a good one.
Yeah, it looks like Massey likes it by 4. Randolph Macon by 4. Same neighborhood.
Yep. All right. Mailbag.
Mailbag.
Give us the first question, Zach.
Yeah, this came in as part of that discussion I was referencing earlier, just kind of trying to parse through some of the teams in top 25 consideration, and so we decided that this actually would make a good mailbag question because it was asking our opinion anyway. So Max Fan at Go Maccabees on Twitter would love to hear you and Matt give thoughts on the UAA race. Seems like people are all over the place, and I'm not sure I agree with anyone so far. All right, to add a little context here, I got a snapshot as we record here Sunday night with the day's UAA results where the current standings sit. And Matt, if you don't mind, I think I might like to address this one first
Yeah.
because I've got a scorching hot take on the UAA race. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's my take on the UAA race. I could see one of any 5 teams winning it, and I'm not sure that we really have enough information, or I think it's still too early to call a winner or favorite with any certainty. How's that?
Sounds good.
No, so
Is
I
that is that your whole
just to,
take?
no, well, to expand on it a little bit. Okay. Part of the reason I think it's too early to read in too many results. All right, this was the first full weekend, full weekend of UAA play where we saw the Friday night, Saturday or Sunday afternoon, right? So last weekend was just Saturday, single Saturday game. Um, and with those limited results, NYU hasn't played at home. So you look at their place in the standings, and maybe that's less concerning. Emory hasn't played on the road. Wash U hasn't played on the road and probably has the easiest conference schedule of the 3 games played so far. So I think let's just take a pause looking at the standings and trying to get any sort of meaningful results out of it yet. I think it's just way too early to do that. I would say any of Rochester, Emory, Wash U, Case Western Reserve, or NYU could win it. So those would be the 5 that I mentioned before. If you really pushed me on that, I would probably have Rochester, Emory, and Wash U in a top tier. And then in a second tier, have Case Western Reserve and NYU. And if we were doing tiers, I would probably bring Carnegie Mellon into the bottom of that second tier. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I see it shaping up. But I think at this point to draw any meaningful conclusions is a fool's errand.
Yeah, I mostly agree with just about everything you said there. I think if I was going to stack up the UAA race, I think to me Rochester is on top right now, and the 3 teams I voted for in the poll in order is Rochester, then Wash U, then Emory. I think that those are the 3 best teams. I think, like you said, it wouldn't completely shock me if any of those 3 won the league. Right now, I think it is likely to be Rochester, but a weird game here or there, and that is completely different. Maybe Emory had their weird game where they lost to Carnegie Mellon, and that's what's going to keep them from winning the league. I don't know. I was a early believer in NYU. I think their results so far in UAA play have been a little bit disappointing. Now they have a very nice result against Roanoke outside of UAA play that is as good as most results out there. So I think that they could be in the mix definitely as well. And like you said, they need to get some games back in New York City to make things a little bit even.
Yeah.
To me, yeah, I think I still personally would put NYU NYU in case. I think for me, I'm like you. They're maybe in a second tier. Maybe Emory's at the top of that second tier right now for me. It's hard to exactly say. I think then yeah, Brandeis and Carnegie Mellon for me are pretty even. There's a lot of discussion on Carnegie Mellon being maybe one of the top teams. I think Bob Quillman said he had them as the number 3 team in the UAA right now, maybe after this weekend. And for me, I just need to see a lot more of it from them. I look at their resume and just kind of said, this is Nazareth's resume, right? It's a good team. They're going to be a tough out for a lot of other teams out there, but it's not. It didn't seem super strong. Like it has to be a top tier team. I think Chicago's clearly at the bottom, but again, they're a good team. They're going to win some games in the UAA. I think they're a top 100 or top 100-ish team. When you look at like a computer type rating, so everyone's good. I don't think anyone, maybe Rochester is on the fringes of being like a nationally elite team. I don't think Wash U is. I don't think Emory is. I don't think Case is, but all those teams are very good, and all those teams would be competing at the top of most other conferences out there in Division Three.
Right. You mentioned how do you view Carnegie Mellon and Emory? Carnegie Mellon winning at Emory, that's a good result. But is that like the true result? Is we're handicapping the overall picture? Like, is that the true result, or was that like a 65-35 win probability game and Carnegie Mellon won, but that was like the 35% result, right? So that's why part of me is just like it's just too early to make any meaningful determinations, even based on the results of the 3 games played so far.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that. I would still leaning on mostly non-UAA results, although these head-to-head games are very meaningful. They're probably more meaningful than any single, out-of-conference result. But I think we're going to see a lot more games as the weeks go on, obviously, and we have time to draw conclusions. But I think I agree with you. We're a little bit too early to put too much weight on these first 3 conference games.
Okay, next mailbag question, and wrapping up this week's mailbag. This one came on Twitter from someone who identified themselves as a Kelvin fan. What happens when a player is disqualified with the fifth foul, but the official stats post game shows the player only had four fouls? And Matt, I think we know where this one's going, and we should amend the question to say shows the players only had four fouls. So you want to reset the context for this question for our broader listening audience?
Yeah, an interesting situation happened during the Calvin and Adrian game on Saturday, January 14. In the second half, player Marcus Bolt, junior Calvin forward, received a foul and then was told by the officials in the scores table that it was his fifth foul. He had fouled out. The Calvin bench was kind of questioning where the fifth foul came from. They thought he only had four. It appeared that the official scorer at the table had maybe logged a player's foul incorrectly. So anyway, he was out. So we thought maybe a foul that was supposed to go to Uchenna Agakeza got classified as Marcus Bolt. A foul to zero went to 2-0 maybe. Anyway, game went on a few more minutes later. Agakeza picked up a foul and they said, "Hey, wait, you fouled out as well." And so now the Calvin bench is like, "What's going on here?" We thought, whatever. So Agakeza goes to the bench after some discussion. The officials say we have to go with the scorebook. This is what it is. Both players fouled out. Anyway, now the box scores are posted, and every box score we can see only lists both player with four fouls, and neither of them have fouled out. So an odd situation. I've never seen it. I've seen where the bench kind of questions, "Hey, was that his third or his fourth?" And they get something corrected or they get on the same page. I've never really seen it happen back to back with both players, have them disqualified from the game due to fouling out, and then only be listed by four fouls on the box scores. So as far as what happens, I think nothing happens. I think it was a mistake that was made that didn't get corrected, and the officials either didn't know how to correct it or couldn't point to it being a mistake, even though the visiting Calvin scorebook that was being kept, a few seats over, they were trying to show like, "Hey, we think this is only four fouls." They went with the, I guess, official scorebook. But that's what happened. It was weird. I don't know. I haven't really seen that too many other times. I'm sure things like that have happened, but I think it was just a mistake, and unfortunately, it couldn't get corrected, and two players fouled out that maybe shouldn't have.
Yeah, what maybe is most disappointing is that maybe it's not that it couldn't be corrected, but it wouldn't be considered to be corrected. Like you said, there was a Kelvin scorebook being kept at the table, not just by, assistant coach on the bench. That Kelvin had their own person at the scores table also keeping score, and quickly was up to try to, compare notes, but no one involved was willing to do that. And we were both sitting right behind the bench actually, so we could get a pretty good direct um, listening ear to what was going on. And the on-court official basically kind of gave a shrug and said we have to go with the official scorebook. So I don't know if it, apparently he didn't have any authority, or maybe didn't understand he had the authority to require or ask the official scorekeeper to try to work it out. I don't know. Um, but yeah, it was very, very odd situation. I think, yeah, I don't know. I know
Mhm.
that you looked right away at what was showing on the live stats while we were still in the arena. It showed four. I don't think did you look when Marcus Bolt picked up his first, or was it only when Uchenna Egekeza got his fifth? Because I know I looked up as well, and the arena scoreboard showed that was his fourth. You looked at the live stats, that was showing fourth.
Mhm.
The Calvin scorebook, Calvin was confused. They thought it was his fourth, but the official scorebook apparently said it was his fifth. And so he was also removed from the game.
And my guess is the box scores that are online get generated from the live stats, which showed four, and that's just what's there. I don't know what happens to the official scorebook that they had to go with. Does a box score get generated with that, or does that just live in a file somewhere? Um, I don't know, but it was sort of weird, and it's sort of just going to live on, as far as I know, as four fouls for both of these players, but they were kept on the bench and weren't allowed to continue participating.
So officially, they have two players who fouled out with four fouls apiece.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
That wraps up the mailbag. Reminder, our mailbag is always open. You can leave a message on this episode on YouTube and we'll pick it up. We can discuss or answer your question in the next episode. You can also send us a message via Facebook, facebook.com/D3Datacast, or send us a tweet or direct message at D3Datacast on Twitter. We look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be back next week.
Good job, team.